Hey guys, Akil Mohideen here, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm reviewing the Dell XPS 13, and I just want to start off by saying that if you're in the market for an Ultrabook, then this is one you should look at, because man did Dell do a great job. No offense, but usually Dell pumps out ugly, plasticky, thick-bezeled hunks of computers with good specs and a low price for the hardware with a 4-digit model number just to keep all the different pieces of junk separated. But here you can tell that Dell meticulously and carefully thought out every single decision, and it paid off. Starting out with the design, we can see that this laptop is made from a combination of aluminum and carbon fiber, aluminum on the cover and bottom plate with carbon fiber everywhere else. I really like the design of this laptop. Although the carbon fiber detracts from the all-aluminum, modern, industrial look that I love, I think that functionality-wise, it is a much better choice. Not only does it save weight, but it also has a textured feeling, so it's more comfortable to lay your wrist or hands on. On the bottom of the laptop, we can see that there are two rubber lines that do a great job of providing traction to the laptop and keeping it from slipping around, a much better job than the MacBook Air's ridiculously slippery rubber feet. There's also a small trapdoor mechanism that hides all of the model and serial number information. Why it's so absolutely essential that this information be completely covered by a trapdoor is beyond me. I would think that hiding the information on the bottom of the laptop would be good enough, but whatever. And if you're worried about this trapdoor mechanism coming loose, don't, because it's magnetically attached. A good decision because any clip mechanism would eventually come loose. On the top or cover of the laptop is just a pure anodized aluminum with an etched black Dell logo, a very clean and very attractive look. Nicely done, Dell. On the right side we have a full-sized SD card slot, a USB 3.0 port, and a Kensington lock. On the left side, we have a button for battery level indication, a nice touch, a headset jack, a USB 3.0 port, and a mini display port, and the battery charging port. The ability to have a mini display port on a laptop like this is incredible, because now this laptop can be outputted to a larger screen or a TV, and it isn't a feature you find on a lot of Ultrabooks. Overall, Dell did a nice job with the I/O. I wish there was one more USB port, but honestly it's not that big of a deal. 2 is enough. Now the speakers are side firing, so the placement isn't ideal, but honestly I was surprised about how much sound I was able to pull out of these guys, especially considering the small size of the laptop. Now they get a little tinny on max volume as expected. They give pretty good mids, not great, but the highs and lows are pretty absent. The lows are definitely much more present than the highs, but still not great. For specs, this guy is rocking an Intel Skylake i5 at 2.7 GHz and is configurable up to an Intel Skylake i7 at 3 GHz. It has 8 GB of DDR3 RAM with no option to increase or decrease. Now a lot of people complain about how there's no option to have more RAM than 8, but honestly I think it is enough. I mean, for God's sake, why would anyone want to put 12 GB of RAM in a freaking Ultrabook? It also has the option for a 128 or 256 GB PCIe SSD. Now I do wish there was an option for a 512 GB, but there is an SD card slot for expandable storage. So on the inside we see the much raved infinity display, an amazing job by Dell deciding to go with a near bezel-less screen. Everyone pretty much agrees that bezels are bad and that it's kind of taken root in the smartphone market, but now Dell has brought the idea into the laptop arena. The screen is 16:9 and configurable up to a 4K glossy display with touchscreen functionality. However, the one I have is the baseline matte 1080p non-touchscreen display. I will say one thing though, the thickness of the screen is suspiciously large. The overall XPS 13 is about a millimeter or two thinner, but the screen is much thicker than a MacBook Air's. The screen provides the colors very accurately, and with a resolution configurable up to 4K, you can't really complain. The colors are great, brightness is good, although I wish it got a little bit brighter. It gets dim enough, but on max brightness, it's still a little bit too dim to work on in direct sunlight. This laptop covers 88.3% of the sRGB spectrum and 65.4% of the Adobe RGB spectrum. Now that doesn't sound great, but it's actually considered more than necessary for any standard digital photographer. For very serious photographers, however, a 90% rating is recommended. So if you're very serious about color representation or a very serious digital photographer, this laptop may not be great for you. However, from my perspective, this laptop has great color representation. I feel like it's a 10 out of 10 display, especially with those super thin bezels. Now since this laptop has great thin bezels, 2 things happen. One, the laptop looks much better when watching movies or video because there's this nice immersive feeling. The second effect though is the ability to make the footprint of the device much smaller. In fact, Dell claims that by nearly removing the bezels, the physical laptop size actually decreased by 23%. Now this is great because it makes the laptop so much more portable and so much more lighter. This translates to the XPS 13 being a full inch less in width and another inch less in depth than a MacBook Air 13-inch. However, the drawback of this is the keyboard. By making the body smaller, there's less room for a keyboard. Generally, that means that companies sacrifice the space in between the keys for the size of the keys. However, Dell played it smart and maintained a generous amount of space in between the keys, and they did this by sacrificing the size of the keys. Now, the keys are by no means small, but they are significantly smaller than competitors such as the MacBook Air. I wish that Dell had actually extended the keyboard to the edges of the body, kind of like what Apple did with the MacBook. That would make the spacing in between the keys much better. The layout is pretty good on this keyboard, no huge errors. The backspace key is a little smaller than I'd like, and the arrow keys are small, but at least they're all the same size. However, the arrow keys usually aren't great on most laptops anyways, so who really cares? The feel of the keyboard isn't bad. It is missing a certain tactile clickiness, and it's definitely worse than a MacBook Air keyboard. The MacBook Air's keys have a much greater depth, and you have to push the keys harder to get them to come down, leading to a more satisfying click than a little bit mushier feel on the Dell XPS 13. The spacebar is especially bad on the Dell. The button force is not evenly spread across the spacebar, so some parts feel like I could push straight through the plastic, whereas other spots I can really feel the clicking mechanism underneath. Not great. It's probably the greatest disappointment of this laptop. Another result is that the webcam is mounted in the bottom left corner. Now this is a pretty low angle and it's not really great for Skype or conference calls or anything, and it's also a really low resolution webcam at only 800 by 600. So really not a good webcam. The trackpad is also not great. They tried to make the trackpad as wide as possible, but the shallow depth of this laptop kind of prevented it. They settled for a wide trackpad, but one with not much depth. A much better solution than a trackpad with no depth or width. It has a nice soft feel instead of the great, impossibly smooth feel of the MacBook trackpads. This trackpad is actually large enough and smooth enough to allow for multi-finger gestures, and the good thing is that they actually work well and are automatically built in. So there's 2 fingers scrolling up and down, left and right, and there's also 3 fingers up to bring up task view for Windows or 3 fingers down to show desktop. Very useful gestures. One complaint I do have is that this laptop doesn't have instant wake from sleep. Maybe I have to really search through the settings to find it, but it isn't native. So every time you close the lid, even if it's for like 1 minute, you have to re-log in. Now it doesn't take too long to log in because it has PCIe SSD, but still, it's annoying. Speaking of the SSD, it's a pretty fast one because it's PCIe, but strangely slow as PCIes go. It reads at about 535 megabytes per second and writes at about 137 megabytes per second, both of which are very slow. I don't know exactly why this is, but this is how it is. Now the computer still feels snappy and it logs in very quickly, so no complaints here. I just wish that with a PCIe drive, I was getting the actual marketed PCIe speeds. Battery life is also pretty good. Dell claims 15 hours on the 1080p model and 11 on the 4K one. I actually found the 1080p one to be closer to 8 or 9 hours, which is still pretty good, just not fantastic. Overall, this laptop is great. If you're looking for something thin, light, super portable, then this is the laptop for you. It brings along great specs besides the SSD and a killer display that could make nearly anyone's jaw drop. If you're looking into buying an Ultrabook, I would wait because Apple is likely to drop a new MacBook Air in June or July that could blow this guy out of the water. Now, if you see the new MacBook Air but still are looking for something on the Windows side or just looking at other choices, this is probably the best contender for Windows. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe to see more like this. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.